You're listening to the BBC World Service. This is NewsHour, coming to you live from London with James Kumarasamy. For the moment, it is more of a political statement than a set of clear policy proposals. But the Green New Deal introduced by Democrats in the US Congress last week is drawing plenty of attention. That's partly because it was sponsored in the House of Representatives by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the rising young star of the progressive wing of the party, but also because it strikes some key chords on the left: climate change and inequality. So what is it and how important could it be? I've been discussing the Green New Deal with Rich Powell, Executive Director of ClearPath, a think tank for conservative clean energy solutions, and Robert Hockett, a law and finance professor at Cornell University and advisor to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I asked Robert Hockett to explain what the deal is.
The idea here is basically we want to renew the entirety of our economy, to modernize it, upgrade all of our infrastructures, and to put many, many more millions of Americans to work in sort of high-paying infrastructure jobs and manufacturing jobs. But we want to do it in a way, of course, that renders the economy sort of more compatible with the continuing life of the planet. And we think that that basically just is what modernizing and upgrading an economy is in the present period.
So this is not just about climate change, it's also about society and inequality.
It is indeed, yeah. Our thought is that, in effect, we really never fully recovered from the crash of 2008. So this is, and of course, as a result, our infrastructure has been crumbling ever further. The American Society of Civil Engineers says that we need about a $3 trillion investment to upgrade that infrastructure. So we're thinking, let's take them up on that. Let's go ahead and rebuild the infrastructure as we should have done in 2009. But while we're at it, we'll do it in a way that rescues the planet.
But you have ambitious goals for cutting carbon emissions, making America carbon neutral within 10 years.
Yes, yeah. Our thought is that you have to be ambitious in order to get anything done at this point. So it's actually, ironically, more cost effective to go big at the very front end rather than to lowball it or slow walk it.
Rich Powell, what do you make of these plans? Upgrading infrastructure, and that's something President Trump, for example, has spoken about, and doing it in a green way seems logical, no?
Sure. Well, I think first, where we see the Green New Deal is primarily as a messaging platform. It's a resolution, after all. So I think it's best viewed as a messaging piece by sort of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And that's fine. Folks have to get their messaging together. But I don't think that this is properly viewed as a real climate policy proposal. I mean, climate policy has to pass three enormous hurdles, technical feasibility and political realism and global impact. And as I read this messaging proposal, I don't see how it passes those three hurdles.
It's sort of a messaging proposal, but it's actually much more than that. We think of it as sort of the opening gavel, basically opening a grand sort of national deliberation over the course of the next decade. People sort of forget that the original New Deal itself wasn't simply one plan or one proposal or one statute. It was an entire sequence of statutes that were passed consecutively over a 10-year period. And during that time, the entire nation was deliberating about precisely what shape it should take. Relatedly, a spirit of experimentation pervaded the entirety of the New Deal. Things were tried, things that didn't work were abandoned, things that did work were scaled up. That's exactly the way we view the Green New Deal. So in that sense, it's really not just a messaging proposal. It really is the opening gavel in this grand national deliberation.
Rich Powell, what is your solution then? What's a conservative solution to climate change?
Well, we certainly agree that we need a national conversation on climate change. Climate change is real. It's an urgent threat. It's caused by global industrial activity. And we think conservative solutions that are already underway treat it from that perspective. And so I would argue that we need to start at the point of the
Although there are plenty on the conservative side who wouldn't accept that as fact.
Sure, that's true. But increasingly, the folks in actual decision-making authority in the Republican Party, so in the House of Representatives, for example, the heads of the Energy and Commerce Committee just last week affirmed that this is real and human-caused, and we need much more ambition to bring about those solutions. And so the places that we agree are numerous. And we had a very productive Congress last year passing a number of bipartisan bills on these topics. We agree on clean energy innovation. We agree on parts of infrastructure and making that cleaner. We agree on some incentives for new technologies to come into the market. And we, I think, agree on the need for solutions that are sort of globally scalable and that put the focus on developing very low-cost solutions that can be demonstrated in the United States, but most importantly, can be deployed around the rest of the developing world. As we all know, the emissions from just the developing nations in Asia, just the increase in emissions between now and 2050 in those countries will be more than the total emissions of the U.S. economy. That's the real deal, right? Solving that emissions challenge. And that means we've got to focus on cost and on rapid feasibility. And it's not clear to me why a climate policy proposal like the Green New Deal that adds all of these other things in, very contentious things like universal health care and jobs guarantees and other things. It's not clear to me that any of those actually help us get very rapidly toward clean, low-cost technologies that we can rapidly sell out to the rest of the world.
I wonder how concerned you are that all this is going to get caught up in presidential politics, because you paint the picture of a Congress where this is an issue which has got people to work across the aisle, but we're all in 2020 season already. The Congresswoman that Robert Hockett advises, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, very high profile, and President Trump has already taken aim at her and others on the progressive wing of the party as he looks to 2020. Does that concern you?
It certainly does. And the key here is that we've got an emerging consensus on the need to do something about climate change. In the United States, the most enduring and sustainable policy has been bipartisan policy. So we would suggest that we focus on the apolitical and bipartisan solutions, not the solutions that immediately bring in partisan politics. I think climate change is just too important an issue to be a partisan punching bag any longer. And I do worry that this proposal risks more of that.
Robert Hockett, can this transcend politics?
Given the current divisions in the country and in the Congress, there's going to be Republican attacking of anything that's proposed along this line, right?
Rich Powell, just a final thought. When you have a president, the leader of the party, who everything he says and tweets suggests he's either a climate change skeptic or an outright climate change denier, you have a big hurdle to overcome, don't you?
We prefer to focus on what the administration as a whole does on these points rather than what any one person says or tweets. And if you look at
even if it's the president of the United States.
If you look at the record on clean energy innovation, the bills he signed, the historic increases in clean energy R&D that they brought into signing the appropriations bills, the new programs that have been launched at the Department of Energy to scale up advanced nuclear energy and grid scale storage. If you sort of look at all these actions, there's clearly a commitment from this administration, at the very least, to the energy innovation and clean energy innovation message. And we think that there's a lot there to work with.
I was speaking there to Rich Powell of ClearPath, which is a conservative climate policy think tank, and to Robert Hockett, who is an advisor to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We were chewing over the finer points of the Green New Deal.